Does your work energize you? Does it make your impact on the world? Welcome to Start Anew, the show that looks beyond success into freedom, fulfillment, and your passion-driven career. Join your host, Sumbul Sang, for inspiring stories and bite-sized training to help you start anew with clarity. And now, here's Sumbul.
You're listening to episode number 29 of the Start Anew Show with part 2 of my interview with Jeremy Ryan Slate of Create Your Own Life podcast. In part 1 of this interview, which you can find in the previous episode, Jeremy shares his multiple career transformations. In today's episode, Jeremy goes deep and talks about how to find your purpose in life. He also talks about his podcast, its vision, and his communication strategy that has helped him land influential guests on his podcast. Let's get right into it. Let's shift gears now and talk about your podcast, Create Your Own Life. I love the name of the show, by the way. It speaks so much to me. Tell us a bit about your podcast, its vision, and the audience it serves.
Sure. Well, if you remember, I mentioned that conversation with my dad, and that's the part I kind of left out because I didn't want to jump into that right then and there. But my response to my dad was, well, Dad, I want to create my own life. And I held on to that for a few years until I was like, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite there yet. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not quite where I want to be, but I'm already creating something. I want to show other people how to do this. And I was like, well, what's the best model to do it? And that's where Create Your Own Life came from. And it was amazing because, like I said, I had failed at a podcast before, so I didn't quite know what I was doing. So I had always looked at people I wanted to talk to like, oh my God, they're unreachable. I can't talk to them. They're people I'll never be able to reach. So I said, you know what? If you want to be successful, you're going to have to reach up. So I made a list of the 100 people that I admire most or think would be most impactful to the audience that I want to impact. And I was like, who do I want to reach? I want to reach people like myself. Entrepreneurs are interesting, and that's a main part of my audience, but I want to reach people that can create their own life in any sphere of life, be it an artist, be it a musician, an actor, a business person. There's so many ways you can create your own life. And I want to reach all those people. So I was like, who are the 100 most influential people? And I then fashioned these emails and sent it to people and had about a 70% response rate. I was shocked. These people that I thought were unreachable were emailing me back and saying, hey, nice to meet you. Really good to hear from you. And I was just like, wow, Seth Godin's a nice dude. Elliot Holtz is really cool to talk to. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. These people I didn't think I could reach. And then about 60% of those people actually booked interviews with me. I was shocked. I was floored. It was amazing. And I was actually then able to take those interviews of, how do people create their own life? What did they do? What was their life experience like? What was their emotional state like? And from there, I was able to then convey that to other people that wanted to create a life that they could really own and have. They may still be in a job or they may still be in the career they don't want to be in, but I don't recommend that it's always the best way to do what I did and just leap into it, because that is an extremely stressful experience. There were days that I was in my office staring at the wall and crying because it is stressful when you don't always know what to do next or when your next dollar is coming from. And I was able to work myself out of that, but not everyone can. So my audience is people that are looking to make the leap, but looking for the right ways to make the leap. Be that into whatever their passion is.
Awesome vision. Talk a little bit about making a list of 100 dream guests and you just find the courage, reach out to them. That's amazing because I know I made a list of dream guests and I still haven't found the courage to reach them.
It's just drilling, repeatedly doing something. And that's where I say that network marketing is probably one of the best teachers to teach you how to do a lot of skills that you're going to need in business, because I was calling people that it made me totally uncomfortable to call. So the thought of sending a cold email was like, oh, that's a piece of cake. I can send anybody an email if I don't have to call them and talk to them on the phone.
Do you think you'd be able to share your favorite cold email swipe copy for our listeners so we can add that to our show notes?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of give your listeners a little idea of what something like that would look like is you have to think about, really complimenting somebody. So when I send an email, I say, hey, Seth Godin, I read your book, The Purple Cow, about marketing, and I really loved it. This is what I got out of it. This is why you're awesome. Cool. Okay, these are my stats, or my perceived stats, where I want to be. These are other people at the time that I had booked for interviews. I didn't have any interviews up, so I shared that with them. I shared, what my audience is like, how it can benefit them, and then from there I said, no pressure, man. If this works for you, let's do it. If not, awesome. But I think it's because you have to think in anything you're doing. There's 3 parts to communication: affinity, reality, and communication. It's like a triangle. If you have one thing that you focus on, the rest of that triangle gets bigger. So if I generate some affinity with somebody, I'm going to get in better communication with them because now I'm creating a reality point for myself with them. So that's something you really, really, really have to take into consideration. And I think that's why people were really interested to talk to me, because they're like, wow, this guy's interested in me. And it has to be real interest, not this Dale Carnegie, hey, you look nice today type of interest. It has to be this actual genuine interest.
That's a really good communication strategy right there, Jeremy. Thank you for sharing that with us. I was listening to your podcast and I noticed you did a bonus solo one on something along the lines of finding your purpose. Do you remember that?
I do. That was episode 13.
Oh, wow. You have a good memory.
It's funny because I've had people say to me before, because they're like, how do you pull the numbers of these episodes out of your guests when you're on a show? And I'm like, well, you have to think about it. If I always want to bring people back to where they can get that information, I have to know off the top of my head. So I try and memorize them.
Let's have your teaching hat on for a moment and share some tips with our audience on how to find their purpose in life.
It's a be, do, have. And you have to start at what do you want to have to be able to work backwards. You know what I mean? What do I want to have? Okay. Then what do I have to be to have that? Great. But then what do I have to do? Or I'm sorry, it's a little bit backwards. What do I have to have? What do I have to do? And then what do I have to be to have that do? So you have to think about all these different things. And if you just work it backwards like that, it's a heck of a lot easier to find your purpose. What do I want to have? What do I have to do in order to have that? And then if I want to do that, what do I have to be? And it's a lot easier to find your purpose if you just work backwards to where you want to be in the future. What do you want to have? The future you want to have is really where you want to be. So if you want a roadmap, you need to figure out, what the destination is, because a lot of people are just kind of spinning their wheels, watching Netflix at night and going to work every day, and then there's no place they're headed, and that's just not a life.
Visualize the destination and then go backwards.
Yeah, it's a be, do, have, and you got to start with the have.
Let's shift gears now and move on to our segment on success habits. Tell us about your morning routine.
My morning routine, I'm a late person to stay up. I usually work into the night. So I don't usually get up until about 7, but 7 o'clock every morning.
7 is not late.
Well, for me, it's late. I'm used to my mother-in-law is a very successful business person, and she gets up at 4 every morning. My body doesn't function like that. So I get up at 7, take the dogs on a walk, make breakfast, go right to the gym. And then I come back, take my shower, do any admin that I need to do for the day. And then around 10 o'clock or so, I'm working. It'll be an interview. It'll be, any kind of design work I have to do, any kind of marketing work I have to do. And I usually knock off around 5 or 6 o'clock, have dinner with my wife. And, we kind of veg out at night a little bit, but I'm not one to really put down the computer. So I'm usually still doing some coding or some editing or some copywriting, something that's going to put the future there, because you do have to, I'm still only 28. You do have to put in the hours to be able to have the future you want. And I'm not where I want to be, though I'm, where a lot of people would like to be. I have to work my butt off to get there.
I love your determination and your enthusiasm. And you're so right that we look up to our mentors. They already have the life that we want, but we still have to work towards getting there.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is your secret to being so productive?
I think my secret would definitely be learning how to use a schedule. It's one of the biggest things that for me, when I got into business, I'm like, wait, I have to make appointments with people. Let me try and remember them. Well, that didn't work very well. And I started using a digital Google Calendar, and then I tied that to my iCal on my iPhone. And then not too long ago, I discovered this app called Calendly, where I can actually send people an invite and decide what times in my phone are open, and they can just book it themselves. And I was just like, wow, okay. Now I don't even have to think about giving people dates. So I've really optimized how I do my schedule, and that's kind of been the biggest thing for me, because if you don't have a handle on that, it takes a lot of your attention units and sticks them in other places. And, your attention is an important thing,
Absolutely. Especially in the world of podcasting, it is such a time saver.
Mm-hmm.
I use Calendly myself, and it's so nice. I wake up in the morning to find out that I've got interviews booked for the following week while I was sleeping. Jeremy, tell us, on your road to creating a purpose-driven business and life, what have you found to be your most important skill or value?
I've put a big value on freedom, because I want to be able to live life the way I want to live. But I've also put a big value on communication, because it's amazing how, really getting into communication with people can change a lot of things for you. Like if you notice people that aren't successful, one of the big things they lack is the ability to communicate. Because, you can sell more products, you can write better copy, you can, do a better design project. You can just have a better conversation with people. And that's a richer life if you're able to communicate.
Absolutely. Just have a better conversation with people. That thing alone will improve the richness of our lives. Jeremy, thank you for inspiring us with your amazing journey to an intentional and purposeful life. Share one parting piece of guidance to those embarking on a new adventure. Share the best way we can connect with you online, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing that I learned is I'm a huge fan of a guy named Grant Cardone. And the thing I learned from Grant is making these huge, gigantic goals, because if it's not something that makes you drool, man, you are not going to work. So you need to make big goals. You need to have vision. You need to and then you need to take 10 times the amount of action you think you need to take to get there, because you're always going to come up short unless you take this giant action. And it doesn't have to be action that's going to take you money. You can take huge action with social media if you do it the right way. There's so many ways to do that. So I definitely recommend people check out Grant's book, The 10X Rule. And if you're looking to how to make a splash in social media, if you're looking to do it with not a huge budget, then check out Gary Vaynerchuk. He has a great book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And it's a great way to build a social media presence without a lot of moolah. And the way people can connect with me, probably the best place to go would be over to jeremyryanslate.com. I'm actually the same across all platforms. So Facebook, I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate. Twitter, I am at Jeremy Ryan Slate, and the same on Instagram. So I try to keep everything pretty simple for people. And they can get a link to my podcast over there, the Create Your Own Life podcast, or if they really want to find it in iTunes or Stitcher, it's there too.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Start Anew Show. We invite you to be more than a passive listener. Be a starter. Join our community and snag exclusive freebies from Symbol and her guests at letstartanew.com. Create your vision of freedom and fulfillment right here on the Start Anew Show.